Brett Okamoto does a great job covering MMA for ESPN and ESPN.com. And I'm just wondering, what was his initial reaction? Was it a chuckle? Was it a smile? Was it a shake of the head? Was it to say, you know what? We knew this day was coming when you heard it was finally finalized, McGregor and Mayweather. How you been, Brett?
I've been good. How are you?
I'm doing well. So what was your initial reaction when you heard everything transpired and it was finalized between Mayweather and McGregor?
You know, I think what the first thing that really went through my head is it's always the fight for me. I mean, I guess I'm a purist. If you want to, I never really considered myself one of those. But the more I talk to people and the more I think about it, I guess that is a role that I fit, because it is always about the fight to me. I enjoy the sport more than the spectacle. So immediately, what I thought about is the fight. And see, I've covered Conor McGregor's career. I've actually covered Floyd Mayweather's career as well. I've been to a lot of their fights, and it's going to be just so surreal for me to see them occupying the same boxing ring. I think that was my initial reaction, is that we are really going to see these guys. Conor McGregor is going to have boxing gloves on, and they're going to be standing. It's just unfathomable, because I know how good Floyd Mayweather is, and I know where his place is in the history of this sport.
Yep.
And you're going to have Conor McGregor, who's never boxed before, in the same ring as him. That's really surreal to me.
Listen, I think you painted that picture perfectly, because it's almost like that when ESPN back in the day used to do those fantasy matchups with, hey, can the 78 Steelers beat the 86 Giants? You know, so it's like now you get that fantasy matchup, but you're also getting two athletes. One of them certainly past their prime, one still in their prime. But how about this? From a financial standpoint, listen, we know it's an event. We know there's going to be a ton of money made with this PPV. And earlier I had Steven Espinoza on, the VP of Showtime Sports, and I was trying to kind of get the price point, and I got at him. It's probably going to be right around where, you know, not higher than what Mayweather and Pacquiao was. But that being said, you know, from a marketing standpoint, you don't do this fight without McGregor, and you got to give him credit in this regard. You know, here's a guy that was making a couple $1,000s several years ago, right? And now all of a sudden you talk about life-changing moment, opportunity, and money. You give him credit because he was able to trash talk his way, to market himself in a way, to brand himself in a certain way, and now he's going to financially benefit from it.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, it's hard for me to say this sometimes, because it's almost like the MMA guy is just talking up, you know, the MMA fighter. But how can you not be impressed by that? Like you said, it hasn't not taken him that long. His first fight in the UFC was 2013. Now we're in 2017. He's a two-weight champion. He holds, you know, a lot of the financial records for that promotion in a very short amount of time, and he's done the absolute impossible of getting himself a boxing match against Floyd Mayweather. No one does that. No one does that. So we're talking about, like, not 1 in a million, 1 in 10 million. I don't know how he was able to accomplish this, but he's taken the perfect steps along the way to do it.
Do you think that this, in any way, shape, or form, this fight will create more MMA fans? Will it lose more boxing fans? Will you get more crossover fans? Or people understand, hey, this is going to be a spectacle. It's an event. If you want to pay, you want to pay. If you don't, you don't have to. It's not gonna kill the sport of boxing. It might not help the sport of boxing. But can you start to see, in your experience covering the MMA, as long as you have, you know, more of a crossover and more of a little bit of a mass appeal going forward?
I don't really think it works that way, and that's my opinion. You know, I will say that I still look at this as somewhat of a positive. I mean, you've got McGregor, who is a UFC star, competing in, you know, the biggest event of this summer, so that's good for the promotion. I mean, they're not really part of the event per se, but, you know, we're going to be saying those letters over and over and over again during the build to this: UFC star, UFC star, UFC star, Conor McGregor. So in that sense, it's great. I mean, anytime you can get that amount of exposure for your brand and you're the talk of the summer, that's fantastic. I just don't think it necessarily translates into future dollar signs. I don't think there's going to be anybody who's really buying this fight who comes away thinking, wow, those MMA guys are really cool. I'm going to start watching UFC and spending $60 a month to buy their pay-per-views. I just don't think it works that way. I think that Conor McGregor will inherit some new fans. You know, even if he looks foolish in the actual fight, I think he'll carry himself and promote himself in a way like he always does, that he's likable. People will like him, and they'll continue to follow him afterwards. And maybe by that extension, they'll start to get into the UFC a little bit more, because if somebody's never bought a Conor McGregor fight, they buy this one and then they buy his future fights, maybe they'll become a fan of the UFC. So I guess it works in that way to a certain extent, but no, I don't think you're going to have this mass amount of people saying, "Oh, I got to watch the UFC now because this has been so great this summer."
Can you see other MMA fighters down the road saying, "Man, this guy's getting a payday. He's not even going to go 12 rounds. He might not even last 12 minutes, let alone 12 seconds." I know that's an exaggeration, but can you see other MMA fighters who are going to try to position themselves maybe down the road where, say, if they're unhappy with Bellator or the UFC, and man, I can make this payday. Let me go and challenge. Let me go call out a welterweight. Let me go call out an Earl Spence or Keith Thurman or Danny Garcia. I don't think that. Look, I know it's apples and oranges because Mayweather's retired. He's all about making that next buck going forward. But do you see any of these fighters potentially crossing over and wanting to do this? And I'm also curious to get your take on this. Have you spoken to any that are just like, I can't believe this guy's getting this type of payday?
Well, your first question, I don't have to wait, to see if it happens down the road. It's happening right now. Jose Aldo was a featherweight champion who was saying, "I don't want to even do this anymore. I want to box." I mean, last year he was saying he wanted to retire from MMA and wanted to box, but his contract with the UFC wouldn't allow it. You've got Cub Swanson, who is not a huge name in MMA, but he's a fan favorite. He's a very popular guy. He's been asking for a fight. The heavyweight champion, the UFC's heavyweight champion, Stipe Miocic, is calling for a boxing match. So all of these guys are doing it, but I don't think any of them are going to get a boxing match. This is a truly, truly unique circumstance.
Yep.
You had Conor having the leverage that he does with the UFC, being the superstar that he is. He's calling the shots now more than the UFC is, and that just doesn't happen. The UFC has control over their fighters. They've lost control over Conor McGregor. So you've got that angle to it. You've got the Floyd angle to it, where he was retired, and now all of a sudden this falls on his lap, an easy 9-figure payday in which a guy that has no chance of beating him, so he was going to take it. So you're going to hear a lot about this. You're going to see it in the media. You're going to see guys talking about it, but it's not going to come to fruition ever, really. And if it does, it'll be another really unique situation. In terms of fighters saying that they can't believe he's making all that money, yeah, no, I mean, they can't believe it, but I don't think it's really in a negative way. I think I think that, by and large, MMA fighters are I don't know if I would say happy for Conor, but they respect him and they're impressed that he was able to do this.
I can tell you the boxers I've spoken to, a lot of them look at it in an opposite light. But you're right, maybe it's apples and oranges, right, between some of the MMA fighters and the boxers' mentality. And I get it, because someone might say, listen, why not fight if you're coming out to win number 50 and you want to tie Marciano? Why not come out and fight maybe a Thurman or a Spencer? Why not come out of a fight and take on whoever wins, GGG and Alvarez? It's interesting. It'll be 154 at McGregor's natural weight. And I'll ask you this before I let you get out of here. And I don't even know, it's going to come out foolish saying it. I don't think he has a chance in hell of winning the fight. I don't think he has a chance of winning a round, and I'm not disrespecting. If you stick Mayweather in a cage, Conor destroys him in 35 seconds. To me, Mayweather is a fighter throughout the latter part of his career, whether it was against Marcus Maidana or even the Pacquiao fight, which was way overdue. He decides, I'm not going to get hit. I'm a defensive fighter, and boxing fans and people look at it as, you're boring, I'm losing money. That's just his style. So in order for me to believe that McGregor can catch him as a southpaw, that means Floyd's probably going to have to engage a little bit. And I don't see that. So if you were to lay a blueprint of how McGregor can actually make it a competitive fight, what would it be?
That he's somehow able to box into like a clinch position. They lock up arms. The ref is a little slow getting over there to separate them. And Conor McGregor, Conor McGregor yanks up on his arm in a really awkward, twisting way, and all of a sudden now Floyd has a little bit of a shoulder injury. Or next time they lock up, Conor's able to kind of jam his knee into his thigh, and now he's got a Charlie horse, and he's not moving as lightly on his front leg. That honestly, though, I know.
I'm not laughing at what you're saying. I'm just laughing at that notion because I'm picturing it in my head.
Yeah, well, that's all Conor has. Is the only card he has is to somehow dirty this thing up. And I will say that he does have a PhD in that. That's what MMA fighters are doing in the gym all the time. They're being rough with one another. And not that boxers don't do that either. But maybe with Conor, with the size, with the age advantage, he's able to yank Floyd in a weird way. Throw him around a little bit, and maybe then that heightens his chance of landing a left hand. But we're talking about 0.5% chance here.
Yeah, well, it's funny because you look at the odds are ridiculous, and that's why a lot of the money's being thrown on McGregor. I thought you were going to say if for some reason Floyd's limo breaks down on the way to the arena, then that's pretty much it. Let me leave you with this about 30 seconds, and I appreciate a couple moments. I'm just wondering, after this, though, McGregor then basically, look, he's going to cash in big time, and you're right, good for him, because who's going to pass up a payday like this? But then I heard, look, he wants to go forward with some titles going forward in the UFC and still defend and still be as marketable as possible. Do you get the sense at all that he might lose his edge at all, lose his focus leading up to this fight, and then after this fight, where it comes to, again, being that marketable guy, that great fighter in the UFC? Is there a fear of that?
Yeah, there is definitely a fear of that. And where that comes from is, I think Conor is a special person. Clearly, he wouldn't be where he is if he's not. And I do think he's obsessively competitive, just like any great combat sports champion is. That's how they get there. But when you get $100 million in your bank account, all bets are off. You don't know how that's going to affect a guy.
Right.
And I do think that probably the most likely scenario is that Conor becomes sort of a version of Floyd in the MMA world, and that he has so much leverage and so much money. Great for him. He's done well for himself. He's provided for his family, all that. You're happy for the guy. But what that means is that he may be less willing to take the real tough fights, take the guys who are in their primes. He'll be demanding a lot of money. He'll take the spectacle now over the competitive fight. And for me as an MMA fan, that will be disappointing if that's what happens, because I want to see him face the toughest challenges of his career that are out there.
All right, Brett, good stuff as always, pal. I appreciate it. Certainly look forward to seeing you on ESPN and reading some of the write-ups as well. Appreciate a couple moments on this Friday.
You got it.
All right, you got to take care of yourself. Good stuff.